Empathy is power, right? Empathy is not sympathy. Sympathy is when I feel sorry for somebody. Oh, poor. No, it's not. Empathy is not that for me. Empathy takes courage. It takes courage. I'll give you an example of empathy. So, growing up in London, white middle class, upper middle class area, there was definitely racism. And for me, early on, I struggled with racism because I took it to mean people trying to put me down. I took it to mean people telling me that I was worthless. I took it to mean, that because I was worthless, I didn't matter. And because I didn't matter, then I could be brushed aside. So that's what I equated racism with. So when people used to call me the N-word, right, I won't bring it up there, but I'm talking about the N-word. It used to upset me, and I used to respond physically, right, hit people. Now, there was one thing that happened to me, which is in my book, Soul Survivor, How an Abandoned Child Went From Nothing to Everything, published by New Holland. And it was this experience where, I was walking down the road in Chingford. Andy Campbell, a friend of mine, walking with me. We're just talking, just walking around. It's probably, like early teenage years. And this guy ran out the pub, like we're just talking. And then next thing I hear, "Oi, nigger, get back to your own country," right? It's like, what the hell? This guy came out, skinny guy, and he hit me. I fell to the ground, right? And wasn't expecting that. It happened so fast. Next thing I'm kind of dusting myself off coming to. I've seen that Andy hit him and this guy went down. 2 or 3 other guys start to run out. It's just getting real fast. I'm scared. So I start to run. I think Andy's next to me. I'm running and I know that someone's chasing me. So I'm running, I'm sprinting, right? It's that fight, flight, or freeze. I was flying. And when I knew I was far enough away, I turned around to see Andy, just to get out of there. Andy wasn't with me. I turned back and I look in the distance and I see like 10, 15 guys kicking something on the floor and people around just looking. What's that? I realize it's Andy on the floor and he's curled up in a ball in a fetus position. And as I walk back, I can hear the kicks. I can hear the sounds the kicks make on his body. I can see him wincing in pain, right? And I can see the hatred in the eyes of some of these people who are kicking him. And then as I get closer, then I'm beginning to realize more and more that I've run away, that I'm a coward. And so I'm there faced with this decision. Do I go back and then get all 10 birds of hell kicked out of me? Do I run away? Do I call someone? What do I do? I froze. So I froze, right? And I don't know how long it lasted for, but it felt like it was a while. And didn't forgive myself for it. And I knew I had to do something, but I was too scared. It's the truth. So eventually, the fight was broken up, and it was some girlfriends of the guys who shamed them into stopping. And the rest of that story, read the book, But what I want to talk about is that, after that happened, I felt embarrassed. I felt ashamed. I felt confused. I felt painfully aware of the lack of courage that I had in that moment to do anything about it. And just the fear, I got real to the fear. And so the next days were uncomfortable because I really wanted to get revenge. And that was out of feeling ashamed, actually. And then I realized that about 3, maybe 6 months prior to that, in history, we studied this thing called the 100 Years' War. The 100 Years' War, the 100 Years' War in the Middle East. And a kid behind me said, put his hand up, Miss, yeah, 100 Years' War, yeah. It can't be the same people fighting, can it? And it went over my head. I didn't really understand it. I just laughed like everybody else. But what I realized about 3 days later, after that physical racist attack, is that, you know, the 100 Years' War isn't the same people fighting at all. It's passed down from generation to generation. Why you should hate, why you should dislike, why you should judge someone based on the color of their skin or the accent or the money in their pocket and so on. And that's what keeps the war going. So then I realized in that moment that I could be part of the solution or part of the problem. And the more that I began to think about it, I began to realize and understand that possibly, this guy who started the whole thing was unconscious to what he was doing. He was living the life that had been passed on to him by his parents or his major caregivers. That theta brainwave state between 0 and 7, where we're a sponge for the things going on around us, for the people around us, for their views, their ideologies about the world. And we take it on subconsciously, forced in a way, without realizing it, to act that out for the rest of our lives, when our RAS, that reticular activating system, the part of our brain that filters out all the images we see every day and it pulls into our awareness only the ones which back up, you know, the way we think our worldview is already. So then doing this, you know, I began to get in touch with empathy, because I began to realize, you know, like, if I found that guy, if I did inflict the kind of pain that I really wanted to, you know, like, what would that really achieve? You know, then I began to realize that I would be no different. And, you know, the fact that I would beat this guy up, I would feel good in the moment. But after that, I would just be compelling history to repeat itself. I would be, you know, deepening his hatred for people like me, right? Because then he would say, you know, it's true, these guys are savages, these guys are da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, all the rest of that. So I began to tap into empathy, right? And this set into existence a chain reaction of events, which has meant that for the last 30 years, I have not been impacted by racism. Now, racism exists, absolutely, but I haven't been impacted from it. It doesn't affect me anymore. Why? Because in my body, mind, spiritual awareness, like, I know what it is. Like, I know that at the end of the day, you know, like, I'm not falling for it. You can call me a name, but at the end of the day, you know, what is actually happening? You know, you are pushing air in my direction. It's impacting my eardrum, vibrating. My brain interprets it as a certain thing. And then with that thing, be it the N word, then I associate that with X, Y, and Z. So it's my association to the word that causes my suffering. And then if I'm not hip to that, then all I'm going to do is act out my suffering on somebody else and keep this whole thing going, just like the 100 Years' War. And so if someone would ever call me the N word, it doesn't impact me anymore. You know, like, all I realize is they're suffering, right? And I don't take it on anymore. So it's got nowhere to hold or to fit or to stick within me anymore. So because it hasn't got that, then it doesn't impact me. Because it doesn't impact me, then my RAS stops seeing it. Stop seeing it means that I'm not impacted by it anymore, which means it doesn't show up. And that's what's happening. So that's an example of empathy at work and what it can create. So I trust that's answered your question.